Welcome everyone to Tutorial Tuesday. It is week number 2, 2020. I'm glad that you're along with us. I have just a couple of announcements and then we'll get right into your questions. And we already have a ton piling up, so we'll make them quick. Announcement number 1, if you haven't yet listened to the Small Business Roundup podcast that my wife Jo and I have released, I want you to go ahead and swipe over and take a listen to the first episode. Tomorrow we'll be releasing the second episode and this will be on marketing, so you'll want to tune in for that. Announcement number 2, if you at any time want to look over at my YouTube channel and take a look at previous Tutorial Tuesdays and see if your question has already been answered, I want you to go ahead and swipe over, take a look at my YouTube channel, subscribe, and listen to and tune into the other Tutorial Tuesdays throughout 2019. Let's get right into your questions. Talk about a bombshell of a question to start this week's Tutorial Tuesday. A few things that I've found over the last decade or so to keep the creative juices flowing. Number 1, keep creating. Number 2, go to the library. Now the third thing is going to seem kind of obvious, but go with your gut. When you feel an image, when you see an image in your head, just try and create it. There's nothing like trying to figure that whole thing out that builds your confidence and creativity. Good question, and I have a ton of experience with this. In fact, over a period of 8 years through Help Portrait Utah, we photographed over 12,000 people that we didn't know. So you have about 15 minutes to establish a relationship. Now the final thing here is lack of confidence, and this is something that can really destroy the experience here. So if it's someone you don't know and you're not confident in your skills as a photographer, the whole experience on the other side of the camera can go south. Several different things at play here in my opinion. Number 1, if we start at the top where you have a PRCA sanctioned rodeo, you're going to need approval from the committee to take pictures, unless that is that you're a media reporter. Next, on these PRCA events, you're going to need to understand that if the rodeo committee has a PRCA photographer there, they're there and they're probably trying to make a living, so don't get in their way. Now, past the sanctioned events, you're going to be looking at more of the small town rodeos, and that's your opportunity to get close, but you're also going to have to check with that rodeo committee instead of just going in there on your own. Number 1, find what you love to shoot, and that can be across the board. You might love photographing dogs or horses or cows or sheep or goats or whatever that is, but find what it is that you love to photograph. Number 2, give yourself permission to be creative. And what I mean by that is the only person responsible for your image is you. That's it. Give yourself permission to be creative. And finally, number 3, find your why. And what I mean by that is find your passion in why you're photographing what you're photographing, because that's going to carry you down the road. Finally, as I use myself as an example here, I find my why and my passion in the ranch life activity. Not rodeo, but ranch life. The relationships between the cowboys, the cowgirls, the families, and their animals. Thank you, friend. I appreciate that, and thank you for tuning in. How do you get in front of brands? You be persistent. You look up their marketing directors or their art directors or their creative departments, find contact information, and send them emails. Heck, even send them a portfolio. Past being a photographer, but more being a business owner, the onus is on you to research and do your due diligence on the companies that you want to be in front of and then find their contact information. And to do that, what I would recommend is looking at a book called The Photographer's Market. This has been in print for, I think, 15 years or something like that. You can find it on Amazon. This has a ton of marketing contacts. Well, down here in the valley, we're doing pretty well on winter, but our mountains are getting a ton of snow, and that's where our primary drinking water comes from, so we're thankful for that. Well, the first thing here is come to one of my workshops because I go over this in detail. Past that, there are tons of online learning resources, and then of course you have to use them yourself too. Topics that you'll want to look for are balancing natural and artificial light together, along with lighting ratios, lighting patterns, and lighting setups as well. Well, it is Tutorial Tuesday, so I'll post 3 different images and I'll talk about them and how I lit them. So let's go. With that picture of Joe, that's totally a studio image. So what I've done is I've taken her, placed her away from the camera, used 2 strip lights coming in at angles, creating a hard light on her, and then used a fill light to open up the back of her. In that picture of my friend Alex, what we've done is I've had to use a slow shutter speed, 1/80th of a second, to balance out some of that natural light, the glow of the horseshoe, but also use a light in the background to get that blue. In that final image of Joe, what I've done is I put my camera into aperture priority. I dialed in the aperture that I wanted to shoot at, took the picture, looked at the settings that the camera gave me, and then balanced my light with the natural light. What's important here is to know what's possible. Once you understand your equipment and once you understand your lights and you're able to use those intuitively to your advantage, the sky is really the limit on this. So have fun with it and don't stop learning. Favorite rain cover? Well, you're going to love this because I'm ultra low tech. I use garbage bags. I have these in my bag. I have maybe 5 or 6 of them in there, and I rubber band them onto my wrist and the camera. Now I need to give you my disclaimer. If you're not comfortable using something like that, don't do it and don't ruin your equipment. I never have over the last decade, so do what works for you. Hands down, without a doubt, and I'm not paid to say this, go see Tenba. Those guys, those bags are amazing, so check them out. Yes, absolutely. Top 3 that I can recommend for you. Number 1, Creative Live. Number 2, F-Stoppers. Number 3, Flern. And don't forget about your local meetup groups as well. Nothing works as well as the camera in your hand. This comes down to the job and your creativity, and let's talk real quick about what we mean when we're saying a prime lens. That's a lens that doesn't zoom, so like a 50 millimeter or an 85 millimeter or something like that. Well, I'll tell you, it's a good thing that I know who's asking this question because creativity and the imagination really come together on this one, and boy, it's taken my mind different places. To watermark or not to watermark? First, let's define what a watermark is. It's something that identifies you, your company, or your brand in your images. It can be, like mine, your initials in the corner or the name splashed all across the image. I've talked about watermark extensively over 2019. In fact, in the first quarter of 2019, I sat down with my attorney and we had a half-hour conversation regarding the legal effects of your watermark and, of course, copyright. Now that we get those things out of the way and we talk just specifically about the watermarks, is it a good idea to put it on there? I believe that it is. In fact, if someone removes your watermark, it's a hard argument for them to say it wasn't done intentionally. My watermark best practices go like this. I have 2, one on my desktop, one on my laptop, so that I can identify an image that was processed on my laptop versus my desktop. Lastly here, there's no wrong way of putting on your copyright. I like to use just my initials in the corner because I like the viewer to enjoy the image. I don't like it splashed all the way across the image.